solve that like maybe no human being has ever done before, and feel good all the time, and bounce back and forth between feeling good and then feeling really good, instead of most people's like bouncing back and forth between feeling good and then feeling bad and feeling good and feeling bad.
Health Chasers, achieving high health and happiness through the practices of self-experimentation. What's going on, buddy? How was your day today? What were you up to?
Dude, I spent a great day living the life. And how'd your day go?
Pretty good. I've been wrapping my head around the intro to this podcast, and I've been trying to come up with a central focal point of kind of what we're all about when we usually talk about health. Um, but I think what we're after is just being absolutely just getting badass results, right? Just getting all your components of health, however you measure that, and you pretty much are 10 for 10 for all those things. Um, I say that right now as I just finished a whole pint of Strauss ice cream.
Oh, jeez.
but
You can't
but
go wrong with Strauss, though.
but yeah, I mean that's kind of my mentality. We've just been really after health performance, really after mastering our routines and trying to figure out ways to just be better at all the components of health, right? Um, but what about you, man? Like what really just made you snap where you're just like, man, I gotta start with a voice. I've got to get this voice out here.
I think just talking to you about stuff, because I had no real plans to uh I've never done made any videos or anything like that. I've just been researching to solve my own problems and make myself really really feel good. And not that I always felt horrible before. I have ups and downs like anyone else, but I wanted to solve that like maybe no human being has ever done before, and feel good all the time, and bounce back and forth between feeling good and then feeling really good, instead of most people's like bouncing back and forth between feeling good and then feeling bad and feeling good and feeling bad. It's I don't want that kind of swing.
Yeah, yeah. All the health experts, they don't really talk about how they feel. They just kind of talk about what to do. And they're like, I got all the answers. Just go ahead and ask me all the questions because I know. But they've never really given me an indication that they have their own lives mastered as far as their own health routines.
That's what's so disappointing. That's one of the turnoffs that led to me just not following anyone's health info, like 6 or 7 years ago. Just turning off all all outside sources and just becoming my own source and doing my own research and trying to figure stuff out, because no one can act like they live a perfect life in perfect happiness. Like, obviously we don't know what goes on inside people's minds. They mostly have to tell us. We can assume they have a perfect life, but um, in the last couple of years, it's been pretty obvious. Like the celebrities that we thought had perfect lives, it's like their lives are like actually turmoil. Like when it really comes down to it, you can see it in their tweets.
Yeah. It almost it almost seems like they're putting on a front to make it seem like they do know all the answers and put themselves in a position of power almost or significance. Um, at least that's just kind of the perception.
Just like you're talking to other health people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I never wanted to be in the health game. I never wanted to sell health products. I never wanted to be a spokesperson, even for my own material necessarily, because I I just think of them all as it's just a really kind of dirty area. You know, everyone's got some dirt on them. It feels like, except for a couple people, but yeah, it just didn't. It felt like by being a part of that at all, I would automatically be viewed as some just dirty person.
And not that they're all bad, but like I guess you can kind of get a view from maybe Instagram or Facebook or some kind of social media of like you were talking about this a day in the life type thing where they send you a snapshot or a video of you know maybe a meal or maybe something awesome that they're doing in that current day where you kind of look at what they're doing and you're like, okay, well, this is kind of what this guy's up to during the day. But from doctors and people that are really high, with their sources of information and people trust this information, you don't really see that visual accountability of are these guys really mastering their health routines? Or are these guys full of it? Are these guys just acting like they master it when they really don't?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the same thing for like the doctors and the whole medical profession. Like they should be providing numbers about the number of people that they are helping or saving, from death. How many people died on their watch versus another doctor. And the same thing for the alternative health world that I guess we're in. It's um the ultimate indicator is your own health. Like if you're the health know-it-all guy, your health needs to be pretty darn good. Not perfect, of course, because we don't know everything yet, but it needs to be pretty good to where you can kind of not prove it to people, but give them a strong indicator of where you're at and what things you're working to be better on. Because everyone's if you're still in the health game, you're working to advance your own health, unless you've just made it just a money making thing, which obviously
Right.
we don't follow anyone that's like that. I actually wrote down because I was thinking about that same question the other day, and I wrote down kind of some pretty good indicators of things that I've used over the years to indicate am I in good health or not, and kind of just a written down way of doing it.
Okay. Okay.
So, pop out my notes here. So I guess I started with because I kind of had this like scattered through notes that I would do in my days, but I never just do it on just one thing, and I've never described how I do it. But basically, if I was to describe someone my health, the most abbreviated way that I could do it is talk about um, where I'm at in the scale of positivity and negativity as far as percentage of the day. So like 50% of the day is like very high, and then 50% of the day is like halfway, just average. So something like that. That's how I would describe it. For me personally, it would probably be somewhere around there. With rare moments kind of going into negative territory. So that's just on the positive and negative scale, which is probably what people are most interested in. And then there's kind of subcategories, just like creativity. Where would you rate yourself at creativity?
That's a good one.
As far as just like in terms of hours, it's you can't say like the whole day, necessarily. You can kind of average it, I guess, but we know that these things kind of pop up and go away and vanish. They don't necessarily stay around all day. But you got creativity, you got sociability, sexual functions, just
Oh, sexual.
motivation.
I like that. Yeah.
What's up?
I said I like that one.
Right. And that's something like no one's tracking. No one's that I've ever heard of is looking at that like how can I better sexual function? How can I improve on this? It's just like look, either you're a sexual champion or you're not. You know, that's it.
That's a big one. That's a big one because you can really gauge how, if you're like, is that all you're thinking about? Because that's like almost manic. But then there's a balance of those two things where you're not thinking about sex all the time, but you're able to be productive and be like, oh, hey, that's a gorgeous woman. I can appreciate the buttocks or whatever, and then move on. But I noticed enhancement when I took the supplement vitamin E almost immediately within the first hour of a vitamin E supplement and arousal and everything, all those things. And I'm like, wow, because for me,
That's odd actually. That's opposite to my experiences.
oh, for real?
Yeah.
Because with me, like, it's different because I got two kids, I've been married for 10 years, I finding the time to do that consistently, like I just want to do it at noon. I can't do it at noon, but it's just one of those things that you really have to almost look at with your health, or at least with me, and kind of notice those factors of, am I able to want to have sex from any point in the day, or is it just a certain point? And why is that? Is that based on some health factor?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Imagine trying to track all these factors for yourself. I just named off I think six, but really there's a lot of other ones that pop up here and there, and so even if you had 20 of them, it's not like you could score the whole day for all 20 because maybe one thing wasn't even present that day. Like if you had no creativity that day, you can't even rate your creativity. It's like don't even write anything about that. It didn't exist that day. Um, but it's really tough tracking all these factors for yourself. I can only imagine being like a scientist and trying to run an experiment where you're working with 50 people and trying to learn something about health from like all 50 people. Like how complicated is it just trying to manage your own health and just learn from it, not even trying to manage but just learn from what's happening in your own health. Very, very difficult.
A lot of factors, yeah.
So that's I kind of put that together. I've been working with those things about how to measure your own health for years and years and years, but it took me actually writing it down yesterday to where I kind of made a little bit more sense in my own mind what I've been doing.
You're one of my biggest influences when it comes to writing down your health information. I always knew in the back of my mind early on when I was a personal trainer that, just logging in your food can be a big difference maker. But there's other factors of the environment, getting sun and being inside to outside virtual ratio movement, things like that. But you were probably my main influencer in documentation of those health variables. And it's been a complete, absolute game changer because before it was almost like I would just kind of go off of almost the cliff notes of what I thought health was, which was everything that I just read off of, in a book or going to school or something on the internet. And that's where a lot of people get their info is they have a health problem and they go to the internet and they try to dig and find the answer. And we both found, or at least you kind of opened that opportunity up, that the answer lies in your own information of health, documenting your own health. It's such a simple concept, but I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like how much? how much could people save on books, like health books, where it's like you could just record, keep a journal, and you're gonna learn way more about health by keeping a journal rather than buying all these other people's health books.
It's amazing. It's it's so simple, but yeah, I don't know if I've ever thanked you for that, but it's been just a complete game changer in my health. The people that I come across that are struggling with their health, and I tell them that, and they're like, oh, well, that's so simple. That can't be it. Yeah. How aware you are what you had 3 days ago?
Yeah, there's these so many, not so many, but there's a couple just long term things. Like if you eat, and we've talked about this, meat cooked in soybean oil, you could have an estrogenic effect for like easily like 3 days after that meal, and that's probably the number one health effect that people are getting from restaurants that they don't even know is happening. They don't even know it's occurring. But if they kept a log, a journal of health effects, well, they'd know unless they ate out every day, and then they'd be screwed. They couldn't figure it out. But let's say you only ate out once a week. Well, your daily journal would show negative health effects for like 2 or 3 days after that meal, and then maybe it would start kind of going up, creeping up after that, and you would never really. You would have to investigate. Well, why? Why is that? Why are the restaurant meals like so toxic? And or you could just listen to us talk about it.
And you start to pick up patterns that kind of repeat themselves almost every time you do something bad or something good. Sometimes not, but in most cases with me, I found very consistent effects from the same foods almost. If I'm staying on my plan.
It took me because I just completely came up with my own system and of logging, journaling, keeping track of stuff. And it took me probably, I think I started in like 2015, and it probably took like maybe 2017 or 2018 before I was really putting together patterns. So starting from scratch, kind of being the pioneer of that, it took about 2 or 3 years to really see patterns of what was happening. But then once I picked up patterns, it was like, oh, this is definitely the way to go. Like this is the way to get answers and figure it out and be like, okay, is this health? We're eating iceberg lettuce. Is that a net positive or a net negative? Because if it's a net negative, we need to get rid of it and never eat it again. But it could take months of eating that thing before you realize it's a net negative. You need to get rid of it.
Yeah, one thing for me was I learned it was actually a win-win if you had super bad health effects from a meal. That way oh, I can't do that anymore. Almost because you tend to, or at least I tend to repeat good health, um, I guess, effects like just in the short term, and maybe I'll be up.
Repeat the meal, basically.
Yeah, a meal or a supplement with the meal.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I had one of those super badass health, energy changing, mood enhancing type of day. And I had changed two or three big things. And one of the things, and I think I told you this, I kind of gauge one of my performances of health with basketball, and I took vitamin E with progesterone. Um, it's Progest E, and I did that with my coffee because coffee for me kind of it does a lot of good things, but one thing it does, I feel like it kind of raises my cortisol just a little bit. but I counter that with niacinamide and theanine. I kind of experiment with those two things to kind of counterbalance the cortisol. And then I bring in the eggs and I'll experiment every once in a while with oysters or liver. So I had that day I had oysters with my eggs, and then I had like a kind of heavy salt if I'm gonna play a lot of basketball and sweat a lot, and then the vitamin E with a couple other things that I usually take in before the meal with my sports drink and whatnot. But um, I had that on radar where I had one of those amazing health uh, periods right before I played and then while I played, and it was huge for me because I was hitting all kinds of shots, man. It was actually amazing. I had like 3 or 4 game winners, but then towards the end, I think I just kind of ran out of nutrients almost, which usually I play until I literally can't play anymore. So I like 2.5 hours later, I just kind of fall apart, I think, somehow. But that period of like that 2 hour period was something that I'm gonna go back and look at with the supplements and the dosage and those things and see. It's gonna be interesting when I go back and play next week if I repeat those same things or not. And that's just one example of kind of how I look at a health uh, experiment.
There's a there's so many interesting things about what you just said. One of them is, so you have to start looking for the small patterns, just like one meal. Okay, this one meal worked good. I'm gonna repeat it, and then try and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it, and then what? After that doesn't work, like that, once after that meal doesn't work, you look at the even bigger patterns. Well, why didn't it work? Okay, what did I have before that meal the first time? So then you're looking at two meals together, the combined effect of those two meals. And it could be something you had the previous day which made that a great meal, you know? And then you try and repeat, okay, I'll try and repeat those two meals, and then that doesn't work for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you're still slowly finding out the patterns, because it's not about one meal ever. It's about this daily wheel moving down the road, and it never stops. So you never can just stop it and be like, okay, this is the start. There's never a start, really. I mean, the start of the day is as close to a start as you're gonna get, but it's not really, because everyone, we all feel different pretty much every morning, or for the most part. Average people wake up feeling different. They slept bad, they slept good, they didn't get to sleep at all. It's trying to learn where that mechanism is constantly going and rotating. And so what I tried to do is um, change my life to be very bland for a while. Kind of sucked, I guess, in a lot of ways, but I realized I had to do that. I had to learn this stuff. I had to make my life very, very bland to where I could get in a Groundhog's Day mode of just, all right, I'm living the exact same day today as yesterday. Why am I not getting the same results? You know? So it's
Exactly, exactly. And you definitely influenced me on that perspective, and it's definitely appreciated on that end. Um, can you give me I got a pretty basic question for you, and I've been wanting to ask you this for a while because I get asked this probably 4, 5, 6 days a week. Um, so if let's just say, for example, a guy comes up to you, doesn't know a lot about health, and he goes, "Hey man, what is your diet? What is your health plan?" How do you answer that?
I don't like just giving people. the only thing I would want to do people is start them on the path of self-learning. That's all I care about doing with anybody at this point. So I never am interested in just saying like, oh, I'm eating iceberg lettuce and grass-fed beef and pasture-raised eggs. I mean that's what I'm eating. That's the secret. That's because even if you do that, well, he could go out and eat those same things and get nowhere, and maybe he'll continue that, maybe he'll give up, and that'll be that. But if you start people on this new path that almost nobody knows about, no one's ever heard of self-learning, self-experimentation, maybe you have to do a little bit of logging here and there, maybe you have to try out some new foods that you haven't had before, but you figure out what works for you and your lifestyle situation, and the influences that are put up upon your body. You figure out the ultimate way to be as happy as you possibly can in this life.
Every once in a while, it's very interesting. You'll get a character, you'll get a person that is interested. Because I feel like when I'm having a great health day, like I did the other day, people were drawn to asking me questions about health, and I didn't really. I'm not, I'm kind of the same way you are. I take a humble approach because we're still trying to, unlike health experts, or at least kind of I feel like for me, I don't try to claim that I know everything. I don't claim that I know all the answers about health. I just know what I'm doing and what track I'm on or what level I'm on. And to go into to every variable of health with that answer of a question, it's I can't think of a metaphor that would be like, but it would just be like, hey, teach me everything you know about physics in 5 minutes, right?
That's that's a tough question. You must have more be around more interesting people than I am, where they're even asking that question. And most of the people I've been around don't even care.
I think it's a lot of it's just psychology because I don't even think they want to know the answer. I think they're interested, but they're not interested.
They're just recognizing, well, especially the people that you play basketball with. Like if you're out there dominating, like they clearly know something's going on.
Yeah. They usually ask about my sports drink. They want to know what's in it. Yeah. I just tell them it's a special magic potion juice that makes me hit threes consistently and game winners.
You said to them, look, that the drink doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is food logging and journaling. Just blow their minds with that, and just watch.
I'm on that plan. I eat for breakfast. I eat health journaling. For lunch, I am self-aware of the second thing that I just ate and yesterday's plan. They're gonna look at me like I'm nuts, but they'd also look at me. They'd also look at me like I'm nuts if I give them the real answer to what's in my sports drink, which is like 20 different things.
Yeah, yeah. Do you just be truthful with them, and nothing happens from that? Like they receive no betterment from it, or do you try and steer them in such a way, or you try and get them interested in, I don't know. I always try and steer people towards, like, if you want to better your health, you got to be a problem solver, because different problems are going to pop up for me than for you, and all I really know about is the problems that I've had to face. All I would want to do is teach people to be a problem solver for their own health. That's the key, and journaling is the number one way to problem solve.
Was there anybody that led you into that aspect of health? Do you have any influences that may have sparked that idea?
Maybe some people write down what they eat. Um, that the vegan I think he goes by Vegan Police. That's the name of the YouTube channel. This guy's so entertaining. He's almost like a comedian. There's just he talks like hilariously, but he's also really into health, and he kind of does the whole try things out and see how they work for you approach. He doesn't come in. He certainly doesn't come in like he knows everything and everything's all figured out. He's just a guy on a path trying to get really amazing health, and so he'll try out. And I haven't actually watched any of his videos for years, but when I did, he was trying out such and such food, and it didn't really work out for me. It made me kind of bloated, and
He would say that.
what's that?
He would say that he's bloated after a meal and all that.
After such and such food, like specific food, not even this whole meal. It was just like he was trying out like if it was iceberg lettuce, it's like, hey, I'm let me talk about iceberg lettuce here for a while. These are all the experiences I've had with iceberg lettuce over the last couple months. That's kind of what I got from what he put out there. And I gotta check back up with that guy. See what, because that was years ago. So it's like it'd be so interesting to figure out, well, where's he at now? What how much of his diet now is kind of set in stone because he figured out all these positive things, and he just has incorporated, so 80% of his day or his meals are kind of set in stone because he's figured out what's good for him, and then maybe he's still experimenting with, you know, 10-20%. You were talking about your journaling earlier, and you've never really told me all that much about what you've learned from your journaling.
I've learned a lot about effects from foods and symptoms, um, and they start to repeat the same pattern. For example, we all are kind of guilty at some point of going off the plan at some point. And I notice a repetitive pattern on the foods that aren't in my diet, and they start to kind of seep in at some point, just occasionally, not very often, but when they do, it's a pretty hefty smack in the face reminder of why that's not in my plan. And it's a catch-22, right? Because we love Mexican food. I love queso. I love everything about Mexican food. But we all know that that food is loaded with soy. It's loaded with toxins and preservatives and certain acids and polyunsaturated fats, etc.
I always kind of wonder when you say you get screwed up from this, such and such Mexican meal. I'm like, well, what'd you eat? Because that's Mexican's kind of like my go-to. Like Mexican or pizza is kind of the two go-tos where I know I can probably get away without getting destroyed from a restaurant meal.
Uh, I don't have the willpower to stay away from chips. So I think chips is probably a
Oh yeah.
deal breaker for me at some point. Like if I have, I I used to just have chips and salsa and then queso. Now I will just get queso with chips to cover up the, I guess, the bad effects from the salsa.
Uh-huh.
And it worked for a little bit, but I would notice a pattern maybe like 2 days later, or maybe even 3 days out, where I have a bad health day because that food is collaborating with the next meal and the next meal that you talk about. And I go back and look and I'm like, well, I ate really good today. I worked out today. Why am I stopped up? Or why do I have anxiety or a headache? And every time I go back and look at that, it has something to do within that 72-hour span. Or it could be repeated days that are like that, where I'm out of town or I go visit my parents and there's no other choice.
Yeah, I kind of I've always said before, like there's no good foods and bad foods, but I do kind of have a list like of bad food like that are just stay away from at all costs. Do not ever eat this food or it will destroy you.
A lot of people would love to hear that, I think. A lot of people are lost in that and they don't know what's bad and what's good.
It's not even the things you notice. Like it's not these things that make you feel bad. It's just it destroys your body's processes to be able to create the things that make you feel good. But they don't in themselves make you feel horrible. I mean, in a noticeable way where you're like, yeah, that food made me feel horrible. But for me, it's like avocado is a kidney destroyer. Um, like you said, that like any just loose PUFA, like what's in a chip, will destroy you. It doesn't even matter what kind of PUFA oil it is. Probably soy being the worst, but any of them just will destroy you because you can't. I think it's something about the speed at which you can process that PUFA, and if it all hits your blood like at the same time or hits wherever it's hitting, it just is like an avalanche. Mushrooms, man. I know you're kind of a pro mushroom guy, but I had a pizza with mushrooms a couple days ago. Actually, yeah, it took about 2-3 days to recover from fuck.
Really?
It was a lot of mushrooms though. It was actually the only thing on the pizza, but there's a lot of mushrooms, and I felt like having mushrooms too. That's why I got it, but it always has a kidney destroying effect. You take your kidneys down, your vitamin D activation is shot to nothing, and then you're not gonna have a good day because you're operating off of a stress mode of energy rather than sunlight energy, and yeah, you're just not gonna feel good. But yeah, I got a whole list of things I just cannot absolutely do. Salt, man, salsa is one of them. If I do salsa, I will be destroyed, and it will, it's like any of these things. You're talking about a 2 day recovery. If I eat salsa, that might be, maybe that's a 24-hour recovery, something like that. But if I have avocado in any sizable amount, that's a 2 day recovery. If I had those mushrooms, that was like a 2 to 3 day recovery. And that was a lot of mushrooms, not a small amount, but
And I think a lot of that has to do with how you want to perform. So a lot of people are able to kind of get away with this stuff when they're younger in their maybe low to mid 20s, maybe even late 20s, and they're able to get away with that and they don't notice the effects. Um, but as they get older, reach their 30s, maybe even get married, have kids, they realize that what once used to be average effects are now starting to hinder their performance, or they're not measuring their performance at all. And at least that's what I noticed for me is I'm a pretty motivated, performance driven person. And some could say I'm kind of like a lot of people I've noticed there are some people that are kind of self-absorbed in how they measure their own performance within themselves, almost like kind of looking at themselves too much. But I think that's something that people should consider doing more because if you're focusing more on yourself with your own health, then you can be better for the people that are around you and have better performances in all aspects of health, relationships, your friends, your productivity, your creativity, like you were saying before. And you start to measure those effects of things that are put together in your diet and in your routine, and you start to pick up on those patterns, like you were talking about with the journaling. And those are that. Then you can really start to kind of get somewhere with your health.
it could be a total snowballing effect of positivity in your life. Like, cause if you're super positive, it makes people around you really positive. If you're motivated, it makes them motivated. If you're anything, it makes all of them around you that thing. Like for you, you got a couple family members, three family members, and if they're unhappy, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're going to be unhappy, right? It's like,
I'm trying to overcome that because, yeah, I'll give you an example. My wife was not very happy last night. She actually had kind of a bad health day. And I was looking at that, and definitely you're spot on with that yesterday. But I looked at that also as my own health may not have been uh, the way that I would have liked it to be at that particular time. And we were watching this movie. This guy comes along and I don't want to tell you the whole movie, but basically he comes into the life of the mom. She ends up hitting the guy, rear-ending him, and they run into each other. And anyway, his vibe was very positive. You could tell that like the Katie Holmes family and the mom were like real stressed out. It was almost as if all like four of their bad energy, like all their energy just bounced off him, and his perspective was like able to stay within him, and he was able to like change their lives because he was so positive and uplifting, even though he was around like all these girls that were like emotional and imbalanced. It just kind of made me think about my life and how that's exactly what I want to be like, because life's not always perfect, and you have to be able to roll with stressful situations. But that was like a huge motivational film for me to like look at and be like, man, if I is that realistic? Could I be like that?
yeah, man, that's interesting, man. These things that you notice like that, I've seen too, and they're just such interesting things. It's just funny that you see the same interesting thing that I think is interesting, because I've thought about that, and I kind of have this view of like groups of people, of where health wise sometimes one person is activated, and then maybe sometime a different person will be activated, and that original person is like inactivated, but they're sharing energy, and that's almost like why they're a group. And that says how the group works. Like if everyone in that group is activated, then something amazing is going to happen. Like they'll do something amazing, like that they'll be the if every one of them's activated, that's like the 1980 US hockey team playing Russia.
Oh, I love it.
I,
One of my
I
favorite
knew
movies,
that
man.
would hit you hard mentioning that movie.
I cry like almost. I get teary at every time I watch that movie because it just.
Yeah, so 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 good.
Plus, it's true. It really happened. So that's even better.
Oh, I've kind of seen this. I mean, I've always been a watcher of people and taking notes about kind of how sociology works and how groups of people act, and I've seen this many times where it's almost like certain people will almost be like feeding off of the energy of like one person, and they always need that one person to be around, or like the whole group falls apart. And it's like
Yes.
I remember, when I was in my 20s, it was like sometimes you'd have a group of friends, and it would be like if so and so's not going out, well then like well everyone's like well then just none of us should go out. If that one person's not going out, then it's just like all right, forget it. But I don't know if I've ever been that tie for friend groups, but I've definitely been in friend groups where there was just that one guy, and it wasn't always him. It was like it could be someone else for momentarily, or it would bounce around, or sometimes you guys are all activated, and it's just like there was one time I remember going out with all these different guys, and like it's almost like I don't even have memories of the night. I have sparse memories, but like you don't make memories when things are going so good. Like I don't think your brain spends that much time making memories of the really really amazing times. It like it only makes memories of the shitty times, or like really consistent, constant memories at least. But anyway, man, we went out this night, and I just remember like everyone was fully activated. They were just every single individual, and there's maybe 5 or 6 of us, but everyone was at their absolute like peak of just health and energy and vibrancy, vitality, every metric that you could use. It was just like we were all at our absolute peak. But it was from the the energy. It wasn't. It was like our energy, our vitality that created a situation that just kept just snowballing even better, better and better.
If someone were to ask you who your influences were from health to get you that helped you get to where you are today, would you have an answer for that?
There's so many influences. It's I couldn't even name them all. Obviously, Ray Pete was a huge influence. Weston Price, major influence. But man, probably hundreds of people like on YouTube, even in forums. I was a part of a handful of different forums over those early years, and just the other people in the forums would just be a huge influence. The direction that they were going, and so it's kind of like every modern topic. There's so many friggin' influences. It boggles your mind, and you're never like in the old days. Sigmund Freud was a disciple of like one guy, and all his thinking developed from what that the elder guy before him did, and then I can't even think of the guy's name, but the guy that was like a disciple of Freud, who came after Freud, was like all his ideas stem from Freud. It's not that the world's not like that anymore. It's like you're hit with thousands and thousands of ideas that you can draw from, and so we're gonna see, and that kind of only started recently with like the with people really flooding YouTube and maybe some other things that are similar with just massive amount of ideas and pioneering work in fields, and we're gonna see because that I don't know, YouTube probably only took off like 10 years ago or so, but I think we're gonna see some absolutely amazing stuff in a bunch of different fields within like 5 to 10 years. Because all those people that kind of started out, 5 or 10 years ago, are going to be maturing their ideas to the point where they can take a product to market, and it's some amazing thing we've never heard of. Um, I myself have some ideas, just not completely non-health ideas that could maybe revolutionize other industries, and that's all based on the influences that I've been hit with. Like I don't just study health. I've studied different things like construction, building construction, and it's like 20 years ago you could only learn building construction by joining a construction company and like learning the business from the ground up, and okay, how are they making a building, and then maybe going to a different company and like, oh well, they're making a building a little bit different way over here, and it's like you would literally have to see it with your own eyes, and then probably within the last 10, 15 years you can learn it all online. There's people that are so passionate about building construction that they're making all sorts of videos about it, and then they're doing all the comparison themselves. They're comparing this kind of building with that kind of building, and they're trying to find out, well, what's best, and they just look at it from all sides, and then you just with zero experience can step into this world through the eyes of people that have been doing it for 30 or 40 years as just superstar experts, and you're already up where they're at, seeing things through their eyes just day one, and then within a couple years of that, like you could be changing that field. you know it's it can literally happen like that quick these days. And dude, we're gonna see some amazing things here pretty quickly.
That's absolutely amazing when you think about it. What possibilities, what infinite possibilities that we're able to go down each and every path, and it's almost it's almost too much to take in. It, what do I want to learn today? What no what I got too many choices to pick from. Do I want to be a construction expert or do I want to be health expert today or what do I want to do? Do you want to dance? You want to be a break dancer tomorrow? What do you think? I just want to talk about my health blog, Health Chasers. I guess I'm going to be posting. I'm going to get that live pretty soon. That website is going to be a blog. Hopefully, it'll have our podcast at some point streamed off of that, and just some health topics that we talk about on here that we can kind of go more into detail with. But I'm pretty excited about that. Getting content on this podcast and getting information on the website.
Nice. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying to start a web forum, and hopefully it's not really running yet, but it'll be a group of people who can be pursuing health kind of in the same mode that I am, self experimentation, self learning, just pushing the limits of what we can possibly be as human beings.
Man, this is gonna be huge for us. I think I'm really excited. What's to come? It's exciting.
Hell yeah, man! I'm pumped.
All right, brother. Well, have a good night, and until next time.
All right, man. Take
Peace.
care.